Hi, my name is Fangzhou from Shanghai Jiao Tong University. I'm honored to share with you about my research on how to promote creativity during COVID-19. And this is done with my wonderful collaborators Anyi from Tulane University and Krishna from Nanyang Technological University. The reason that we are interested about this topic is the need for greater creativity during COVID-19. This unexpected global health emergency is reshaping everything we know about social life. Companies are rapidly increasing or transforming their products or service to cope with the challenge. For example, R&D labs are trying to develop innovative medical treatments and vaccines. Fashion retailers like Diesel try to launch virtual showroom, and Google developed AR tool to visualize social distancing guidelines. And all these need to stimulate employee creativity. Despite the need for greater creativity during COVID-19, threat rigidity theory suggests that in threatening situations, employees feel more anxious and therefore tend to be more close-minded and less creative. In addition, researchers have identified individual and organizational factors that may buffer the negative effects of perceived threat. For example, the duration of the threat and organization resources. In this research, we are interested about how cultural factors can buffer the effects of threat on anxiety and creativity. So here's how we developed our model. First, when people feel threatened, such as during the COVID-19 pandemic, they experience a fundamental shift to a biological defensive state. The brain releases stress hormones, and the body activates a basic neutral process that creates subjective feelings of stress and anxiety. So we propose that greater perceived threat of COVID-19 is associated with greater anxiety. Then, according to the threat rigidity perspective of creativity, heightened anxiety may induce a prevention focus, a narrow scope of conceptual attention, as well as a preference for familiar routines. And these will hurt employees' creativity. And thus, we propose that greater anxiety is associated with lower employee creativity, and anxiety mediates the relationship between perceived threat of COVID-19 and lower creativity. However, not all employees may respond to the threat in the same way. In the present research, we propose that cultural collectivism can buffer the negative effects of perceived threat of COVID-19 on employee anxiety and creativity. Collectivism is defined as interdependence with one's group, and people with a collectivistic orientation tend to subordinate their own needs to those of their group. Collectivism has been conceptualized both as a dimension of organizational culture as well as an individual difference factor. On the one hand, employees may feel more protected when they perceive that they are working in an organization that is high in collectivism. This is because high collectivistic organization is likely to emphasize norms of conformity. Employees in such organizations may feel less anxious because they believe that their co-workers and their organizations are more likely to engage in recommended behaviors to protect them. Further, belonging and identifying with a group which high in interdependence can enhance employees' perceptions of control and capability to effectively diffuse threat. This is because interdependent action by a collective can help individuals attain goals and overcome challenges that an individual may not achieve alone. This greater sense of collective control and efficacy has helped them diffuse the threat of COVID-19. On the other hand, at the individual level, collectivism may also buffer the negative effects of COVID-19. Employees who are high in collectivism may believe that others also share their collectivist values and beliefs. Specifically, those who are high in collectivism may be more likely to assume that others in their community also conform to recommended behavior. and are more willing to provide help in threatening situations. Thus, we propose that the effect of perceived threat of COVID-19 on anxiety will be moderated by collectivism, and collectivism moderates the indirect relationship between perceived threat of COVID-19 and creativity through anxiety. We test our hypothesis in two studies. Study 1 was a multi-wave and multi-source field study from a large apparel retailer in southern China. In Study 1, we make subordinates rate perceptions of organization, collectivism, perceived threat of COVID-19, and anxiety, and we make leader rate employee creativity. As we can see in the regression table, perceived threat of COVID-19 is positively related to anxiety, and anxiety is negatively related to creativity. In addition, the indirect relationship from perceived threat of COVID-19 and creativity through anxiety was significant. We also find that the interaction term of perceived threat of COVID-19 and perceived organizational collectivism was negatively related to anxiety. As we can see in Figure 2, we also find that when organizational collectivism is high, which represented by the dashed line, the relationship between perceived threat of COVID-19 and anxiety was not significant. But when the collectivism is low, which represented by the bold line, the relationship between perceived threat of COVID-19 and anxiety was positive and significant. We also found support for the moderated mediation hypothesis in this study. Study 2 was an online experiment conducted with American sample. We manipulate collectivist beliefs by asking them to consider the ways in which they are similar to relevant social groups, and we use snowy picture tests to measure creativity. In this study, we also find that perceived threat of COVID-19 is more strongly associated with greater anxiety in the low collectivism condition. And collectivism moderated the relationship between perceived threat of COVID-19 and creativity through anxiety. In terms of future directions, our findings have broader implications for the experience of threats in workplace. Employees often encounter a number of threatening situations that may be unrelated to COVID-19 in the workplace. But cultural collectivism might also help them overcome these threats. Future research could test this possibility. In addition, we did not consider the moderating role of individualism. Future research could test the possibility that individualists and collectivists may have distinct strategies to cope with the threat of COVID-19. In terms of practical implications, our findings suggest that it may be especially important for employees to find ways to affirm their interpersonal relationship and sense of belonging during COVID-19. For example, companies can conduct virtual company social gatherings to build interpersonal connections, and also emphasize collectivist values in emails and notice boards. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and thank you again for my wonderful collaborators, Anyi from Tulane University and Krishna from Nanyang Technological University.